Hi, everybody. It's Kira and Deana in the amazing recording studio / laundry room. You can see all of the paraphernalia. Well, not all of it. You can't see the dryer sheets and all that, but you can see the fancy stuff. The mic, the foam, the door. Important. You have to close the door. We've had all kinds of noises throughout this season, which we are very glad we're behind the door.
Yes, indeed.
And usually we don't cause too many noises in here, although that happens too. But we're here today because we are bringing you, a couple great things. One is the dressed down Deana. I mean, that's something, right? Kira actually, I'm going to blame her because she was like, just leave it. I'm having Blue Friday on a Tuesday, so I'm just supporting the local team, and my hair is up, and this is life, right? Sometimes mom life necessitates that you're only partly put together. What can I say?
Momming hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens. I just dropped off a person at college. I'm adjusting, okay? I get a free pass. But the other thing we're bringing you is our video show notes from our episode on single parenthood, and it was great because, of course, we believe in future-focused parenting, or we wouldn't have named our business that. And not only can you be a future-focused single parent, you should be. I mean, there's really... It's actually imperative. I think it's more important when you're a single parent that you've really got some intention behind what you're doing and you're thinking through these things. But what was extra great and is always a treat for me is this one. I mean, she's always a treat for me anyway, but what's great is whenever I'm talking about blended families or today, the single parenting topic, what I love is that Kira can bring something to the table that I can't because she lived it as a young person. So she lived it as a child who went through this. And I found what she shared today to be super helpful on multiple levels. So we're just going to hit some of the highlights for you and chat a little bit about some of the things that we covered.
So you started by talking about
Self-care.
Self-care, and as a single parent, how do you take care of yourself? And it brought up an interesting thing about, there's so many different ways that people become single parents, and then so many different situations they might find themselves in. So it could be that they have a co-parent, in which case you can do self-care when your children are with the co-parent, and that's actually a really smart and appropriate choice. And I talked about this because I had two co-parents, that I realized that as Deana was sharing this example, that kids are really self-involved and narcissistic, and not in a nasty way, just in a developmental way. And I have no recollection of what my parents were doing when I wasn't with them. I really didn't care. And I think that speaks volumes to alleviating guilt as single parents, that if you are not with your child, that they are suffering somehow. That's actually probably not the case if when you are with them, you are loving them well and prioritizing them. And that's kind of what you were saying, that the self-care actually allows you to be able to love them well and continue to prioritize them, and that's why it's so essential.
Yeah, and I think it makes you a better parent. So it's not just a fun little cherry on top. I think you need to do it. And so we just talked through some of the ways, and Kira's right. If you have the ability to still have that other parent in the picture, try to utilize that time well. And then that way, when your kids are with you, you can be really not just physically, but emotionally and mentally available and present and not be taking away from that. However, of course, that's not the situation for everyone. So we also went through just some of the different ways you can find help if that's not your situation. There's community resources sometimes. There's Mom's Night Out at extracurricular activities, or occasionally, and I've seen this only a few times, but I did mention it in the episode, so it's worth mentioning if you want to look for it. Occasionally there's kind of a whole day that's just for single moms, and sometimes a community center puts it on, sometimes a church puts it on. You can do everything there, from getting your nails done to getting an oil change on your car. So it's amazing. And if you can find one of those events, you should go, because you get a break. They provide activities, really fun stuff for the kids. Sometimes there's a bouncy house and different activities. They can do crafts, and you just get a little bit of pampering. So looking for those things can be really great too. And of course, if you have people in the area that are your people, they will probably be glad you asked. I think sometimes we have this notion that it's a real burden and I shouldn't ask people for help. But if you've got grandma nearby, or you've got a dear friend who's almost like an auntie to your kids, ask, can you watch the kids for a few hours just so I can go get my nails done, or maybe go have happy hour with a friend. Often you will be pleasantly surprised they'll be glad to do it. And then there is that final level, though, for people who are a little bit more isolated or maybe living in an area that's not as familiar to them due to whatever circumstances that might be. And so we just talked through some really practical ways you can still take good care of yourself, and that it is okay to tell your kids, you know what, I love you so much and I want to really give you the best of me. And so I need a little bit of time. I'm going to take a little break, or mommy's going to go take a bath, or mommy's going to go exercise, and then I'll be back so I can give you my full attention. That actually is a message of love to your children, and Kira really highlighted that well. I mean, she really kind of hit that nail on the head, because that's not an unkind message.
No.
It actually tells your kids, I'm important. Wow, mom really wants to give me her best. And so in order to do that, she's going to take this break. So we just talked about looking for those little ways that you can do it, whether it's finding a pocket in their schedule where they're not needing you as much if they're busy with homework or they're off at soccer practice, or if you're a parent who really does kind of have full-time duties, so to speak, and the only time your kids are gone, so are you at work, that go ahead and take that little break, and you will be better for it, and actually so will your kids.
Yeah, and I think it's really about taking advantage of opportunities that present themselves without guilt. I was actually thinking, I didn't even say this in the episode, so you're getting a little extra bonus thing, but I was in a coffee shop the other day, and it was one of those shops that has little Post-it notes for prepaid coffee that if you can't afford one or whatever, that you can grab. And there was one that said, for a single mom having a hard day. And I thought, first of all, how amazing. That's exactly right. But second of all, how many single moms are going to say, it's okay, I'm actually allowed to take that?
Yeah.
And that is so important, not to be guilty or ashamed or feel like you aren't worthy or deserving of taking advantage of help, to make you feel the best you can be so you can love your kiddos well, especially if you're the only one who's giving them that. They need it, and you need it too. So not being afraid to take advantage of those opportunities. We also talked about finding or creating a childcare share. These exist where everybody gets points for the number of kids they have, and you have to work a certain number of hours, but then you gain a certain number of hours. And this can be a great guilt-free way, because you're putting in the time, so you're not going to feel guilty asking for your hours. They're built into the share. A great way for single parents to just carve out that little bit of space for themselves.
And you can absolutely start one of those. I mean, people will be glad to have the opportunity to have some childcare swap. So if you don't see something like that exists in your area, don't be afraid to be the one who's like, hey, you guys want to go in on some babysitting?
Yep.
They'll probably love it.
Exactly.
And then we just at least touched on, we didn't dive deep into this because they're their own topics really in and of themselves, but we did talk a little bit about just finances for the single parent. Kira told a very touching story about her dad buying her something really special during his single parent years. You have to listen to the episode for that one. We're not giving that away. But really about how it does become really essential, especially if your budget is on the tighter side during this time, and if you're facing maybe more limited resources because it's just you, that it does become really important to budget that out and be careful. And just like with anything we talk about, to be intentional about which sacrifices you're making so that your kids still come out ahead, meaning they don't feel that life took a total downgrade just because you became a single parent. Now, it doesn't mean that everything is going to look the same in terms of how much you eat out or how many gifts are under the tree if you celebrate Christmas. Those things might look different, but that it's about the intentional and purposeful choices that you make with your resources so that you might make some special memories with your kids, or so that they at least know that all their needs are met. That speaks love to a child, to not have to wonder where a meal's coming from and things like that just because you were being silly with your finances. Now, some people are struggling with that very legitimately. That's different. That's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about here is if you are in a situation where things are tighter, then it becomes extra important that you're being careful with how you manage that. So we just briefly touched on that. And then we also, near the end of the episode, talked a little bit about relationships and single parents diving back into that and how that can really impact the kids. And mostly we just provided some cautions on time and waiting, and also with waiting to introduce your children to somebody new. And again, Kira came in with the amazing perspective on that because you had one of each, right?
Yeah, I had one parent who dove right back into dating really fast and furiously, and often and introduced me to everyone, and I was young and got attached to several of them, and that was really hard. And I had one parent who really took their time, and that was better. So I think, Deana was sort of suggesting that, and I was able to say, yeah. I would completely concur as a child with parents who were not together, that time, that waiting period. And we also kind of talked about the fact that that doesn't mean you actually have to wait. It means you have to appear to be waiting. Mm-hmm. So it's okay if you really want that companionship and you want to dive back in, that's fine. But then you really need to do it outside of your kids. So if you do have a co-parent, when they're with the co-parent, that's a great time to go on a date, but probably not when they're with you for you to get a babysitter so that you could go out on a date. Right. And maybe they meet them in passing. That's probably not the best thing to be doing at the beginning.
Yeah, excellent point. So there's a lot there, and it truly was kind of just the tip of the iceberg. But we recognize that we have listeners who are single parents, and we just want you to know that we see you, and you matter, and your job is really hard, and you are not exempt from self-care. And you also, though, on the flip side of that coin, are not exempt. You don't get to just cop out of future-focused parenting. You can and should be doing it. Mm-hmm. And so these were just some ideas, kind of a launch pad to be thinking about some ways that you can actually make the most of this season of your life rather than viewing it as this terrible thing. It can actually be a really beautiful thing when it's handled well.
Yeah. You had a book resource that you loved?
Yes. If people want more, especially on the dating piece, because we really didn't get to talk about it for too long in the episode, there is a great book, and it is called Dating and the Single Parent. And apologies, I don't remember, there's two authors, and I don't remember both of their names, but it is a great resource because it talks more about how do you deal with the timing, how do you be sensitive to your children's feelings, and it just handles the topic in a really positive way. So if you're looking at, is it time for me to get back out there, it might be a good resource to check out.
And then finally, I just mentioned from the child's perspective that it's really important for single parents to know that if you are loving your children well, you are enough. Even if you don't feel like it, I can tell you as someone who was raised by two single parents who loved me well and co-parented well, that they were enough. They were enough. So just hold on to that. That's a really important piece that I think is easy for single parents to worry about, that they're not enough. You are.
Absolutely. So if you want more on this, definitely check out the episode on single parenting. And if you need coaching or have a question for us, please reach out to us, info@futurefocusedparenting.com. We also welcome your reviews and comments, so please find us and do that as well. We are at Future Focused Parenting and at Raising Adults Podcast on both Facebook and Instagram. And you can leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and we really appreciate those, and they help us out. So thank you for being faithful listeners. We appreciate you.